Jephthah's daughter tearfully walks up a mountain path with a crying companion following her. The soft sound of her sobs mingled with the whisper of the wind. Neither dared to speak. They feared that if even a single word escaped, it might shatter the fragile resolve holding them upright. Shaking, she stops at the top of the mountain as a red sun rises.
I do not regret my father's vow, but I mourn what will never be. Children to carry on my name, a husband to share my days. Let my life be a lesson. Vow wisely, for the cost may be more than you can bear.
In these days, Israel had no king, and chaos ruled the land. The sun was high over the hills of Gilead, casting its golden rays on the battlefield where Israel's fate hung in the balance. Jephthah, son of Gilead, stood at the head of his army.
Today we fight not for ourselves, but for the Lord. Let the God of Israel deliver us, and let his enemies fall before us.
But Jephthah's heart was restless. He had risen from the scorn of his brothers. He knew victory required more than swords. It required the Lord's favor. That night, before the battle began, Jephthah knelt alone beneath the stars. The cold wind swept through the camp as he raised his eyes to heaven.
Lord, if you deliver the enemy into my hands, I vow to sacrifice to you the first thing that comes out of my house to greet me when I return in triumph.
There was no response, but a distant thunder clapped in the clouds. Jephthah did not know it yet, but with that reckless vow, he had sealed his fate. Ignoring the sudden chill, he rose, but persisted with his prayer.
Grant me this one thing, Lord, and all I have is yours.
A wild look crossed his eyes. He walked back to camp assured of victory, but suddenly uneasy about his promise. The battle was fierce, but as it raged on, more of the enemy's soldiers fell to the sword. The Israelites triumphed. Jephthah's strategy was sharp, and his men fought with the strength of lions. When the last of the Ammonites fled, Jephthah fell to his knees, raising his bloodied hands to the sky.
Praise be to the God of Israel.
His men echoed his cry, the sound rolling like thunder across the hills. Jephthah returned home with the shouts of victory behind him. His heart was full, yet heavy with the memory of his vow. As his house came into view, he slowed his steps. What would greet him? A servant? An animal? He prayed silently, hoping the cost would not be too great. Then the door opened. She emerged, radiant and full of joy, her tambourine jingling in her hands.
Father, the Lord has given you victory!
His only child, his beloved daughter. She danced toward him. Jephthah froze. His sword clattered to the ground. He wanted to step back, but could not move.
My daughter, you have brought me low. You are the first to come out of my house, and I have made a vow to the Lord, a vow I cannot break.
Her laughter faded, replaced by a look of fear, then of quiet understanding. She stepped closer, her tambourine falling to the dirt.
Father, if you have made a vow to the Lord, then you must fulfill it. He gave you victory. Give me 2 months to go to the hills with my friends. Let me mourn.
Jephthah sank to his knees and nodded. He whispered, "Go." The hills were quiet, save for the soft murmur of voices. Jephthah's daughter sat among her companions, gazing at the horizon.
I do not regret my father's vow, but I mourn what will never be. Children to carry on my name, a husband to share my days. Let my life be a lesson. Vow wisely, for the cost may be more than you can bear.
She falls to her knees and weeps. Today was all she had. Tomorrow she would return to her father, and her fate would be sealed. 2 months passed. She returned home, her face calm, though her father's was lined with grief. Jephthah led her away. The villagers gathered, whispering in hushed tones. They had heard of her bravery and his torment. As the sacrifice was made, a mournful silence fell over Gilead. The people of Israel vowed to remember the weight of Jephthah's vow and pass on the story of his daughter's sacrifice to remind them to never make a reckless oath. Perhaps at that time, so much lawlessness and immorality had crept into Israel that Jephthah, one of the great warriors and judges, did not realize the sacrifice he made was in complete contrast to God's law. Others say he never sacrificed his daughter. He only dedicated her to lifelong celibacy and service to the Lord. This story is found in the book of Judges. It warns about the consequences of societal chaos and rash or thoughtless vows, particularly those made to God. Jephthah's vow was unnecessary and poorly thought out, leading to devastating consequences. Always think carefully before making promises, especially when the stakes are high. Once a vow is made, it is binding and may carry unforeseen costs. You've been listening to Verse to Flicks.